Well, thank you so much for inviting me here. It's amazing. I'm really just delighted because I drove out of Ballater in 2004 after my Auntie Lulu died, and I thought, I'm never going to come back home to Ballater again. And that brought tears to my eyes, and it still does. And here I am back home to Ballater, because Ballater was always home. So I'm just going to tell you a wee bit about my family. I'm going to sing you some songs, and I'm going to tell you some stories. So I was born in 1952. My parents, Betty Gillis and Jimmy Allen, met at the Duca. And I think I was conceived in Ballater. I was the firstborn. They got married in 1951. And my father was in the Forestry Commission, so he got moved from forest to forest, and he was sent over to the West Conservancy. And that was so I was brought up in wee villages in the West Coast. But every time anything happened, we're home in Ballater. So every single holiday was with Auntie Lulu and Grandad. Grandad had Pringle's Garage at the time. And before that, I think he had the other garage down here, whatever the name of that one is. And many of you'll still remember Lulu, because Lulu was a kind of stalwart in the village. Everybody loved Lulu. She was my favourite auntie. And our family were always, on this side of the family, this is my dad's side of the family, they made up at Dalmuchie. And Dalmuchie, Granny Allen, oh, she was something else. She ran the Women's Institute. And so I'm going to start with her, really, because I'm going to take, this is the Allen side of the family, and this is the Gillis side of the family. So when I was a wee girl, I would come back to Ballater, and I'd go and stay with my Granny Allen. Now, Granny Allen was for Glenlivet originally. She'd come to live here in the 40s. And her son, Jimmy, is my father. And I would go and see my granny, and it would go like this. Faw's that coming in a boot? Faw's that? Oh, wow, and spear. So I'd have to be sent out to spear, or she'd go out and spear. Oh, you're coming in now. You come in here. Just come in and sit you down by the fire. So it was perfect strangers who would be walking about wherever they were walking, along through Dalmuchie and all these places. And she'd have them sitting by the fire, and she'd have some scones and maybe pancakes. And she'd have my granddad had to come in with his fiddle. I would have to sing. And before you knew where you were, there was a wee ceilidh going on, and she had pristine white bags. And I had to, I'll bend for a baggie, Margie. So I had to go and get a baggie, and then in the bag she would put wee cakes or scones or something that they would take on their way. And before they left, they would probably get the tea leaves. The tea leaves, you know the tea leaves? They got the tea leaves, and then they would go. And at Christmas time, I'd be sitting there, because we came home at Christmas, we came home all the way through the summer, I was home. And she would have a string above the range, and there was a whole load of cards on it. And I'd say, what's that card, Granny? She'd say, now that's Jeremy and Angela from Chipping Sodbury. And I'd say, first Chipping Sodbury, Granny. Oh, how am I doing in England somewhere? But that was fine. And that's how she lived her life. Now, when I look later on in my life and I see, where does that come from? Where does that hospitality come from? It's really the only way to live. And it was bred into me as a little girl. And, you know, when I look back to our history and I look at, for example, Columba, who came whenever it was, 563 to Iona, and he sent, you know, he washed people's feet. When the pilgrims arrived at Iona, he washed their feet. And then he sent his monks out to spread the version of Christianity. But the version that was spread in the Celtic tradition was that Christ is the king of hospitality. So you welcome the stranger, and the stranger comes to your house, and they're to be the better of their passing. And I think these kind of lessons that I got bred into being by Granny Allen was one of the most important lessons in my life, because we are struggling today with these ideas. And it was bred into me here, and I've never varied from it. Hospitality for me is really important. We have to welcome people. We have to take them into our hearts, because you never know who's going to come through your door next. And there's a very beautiful blessing that I often think about when I think of Granny Allen, because that's what she taught me. As I was driving through Glenlivet today, that was where she was born and bred, in Glenlivet. And I was driving through to come here today, and I was thinking about there's a beautiful thing by Kenneth MacLeod. I would have been in the Gaelic, and he collected it from his auntie in Egg. And it was, I met a stranger yestreen. I put food in the eating place, drink in the drinking place, music in the listening place. And in the sacred name of the triune, he blessed my home and my hearth, my cattle and my dear ones. And the lark sang in her song, often, often, often goes Christ in the stranger's guise. And so I'm doing a lot of work with music right now. I've never learned music. Can't read music. But my mother sang to me in the womb. She sang to me in the breast. I heard music every day in my house. My granddad was a fiddler. This granddad here, he was a fiddler. He took his fiddle all the way through the First World War. It was in Gallipoli with him. He was fiddling. He brought it back, and he was still fiddling when I was born. You know, thank God he stayed alive to do it. And so I'm just going to sing a wee song because it epitomizes that part of my life. I took this song, these words, and I put it to music. I put it to Lament for the Bishop of Argyll, which is an old Pibroch tune. I'm right in amongst our ancient tunes. That's where I spend any of my free time, thinking about our ancient music and our ancient cultural heritage, because we have music that is utterly priceless. And I was born into it, not in an academic way, but I was born into it in a village here. That's where I got my music bred into me. And music sustained my whole life. I write books about it, not posh books about music theory, but how everywhere I go I can sing. So I'm going to sing, the first one I'm going to sing is this beautiful song, I Met a Stranger Yestreen, in tribute to my granny and all the grannies that did that for their kids in Ballater and everywhere else. I met a stranger yestreen. I met a stranger yestreen. I met a stranger yestreen. I put food in the eating place, drink in the drinking place. I met a stranger yestreen. I met a stranger yestreen. I put music in the listening place, music in the listening place, and in the triune sacred name, he blessed my hearth, he blessed my hame, he blessed my hearth, he blessed my hame, my cattle and my dear ones there. And the lark was singing in her song, and the lark was singing in her song. Oft times gaze Christ in strangers' guise, oft times gaze Christ in strangers' guise. Pirikiki, kiriki, kiriri, pirikiki, kiriki, kiriri. Oft times gaze Christ in strangers' guise, oft times gaze Christ in strangers' guise. Okay, Granny Allen, we're moving now. And I'm just thinking about Ballater. Auntie Lula was a great singer. You would remember, some of you remember listening to her singing. She's a great singer. And I'm in Ballater Kirk with her one day. Oh, this is a while ago. And she wasn't a jokey person, but sometimes she told you wee stories. And she told me this story, and I still crease up at this story because it's a true story. And I hope the person isn't in the room that the story's about, but it could happen. So she's in the Kirk, and there's a wifey in the Kirk, and she's looking after all the polishing of all the altar and everything else, and it's her job. And she goes on her holidays, and my auntie just happens to be in the Kirk when she's listening to this wifey, when she's overhearing this conversation. And there's some very nice ladies from Crathy, Kirk, who come down to look after it in her when she's on her holidays. And for some reason, they've not done it very well. And this wifey, whoever she is, and she might be in this room, I don't know, but anyway, she's not impressed. So she's saying, well, you need to just do this, and she's really put that they haven't done it properly. So this terribly lady from Crathy Kirk says to her, I thought God was in charge here. And this wee woman says, aye, but when he's nae here, it's me. Now that was one Auntie Lulu's jokes, and because it was true. And I always remember that in Ballater. I remember just creasing myself in Ballater listening to that. If he's nae here, it's me. Right. So moving now to my mother. Because my mother was the youngest of the three girls. There were three. This is the Gillises I'm on to now. I moved from the Allens to the Gillises. More of you will know the Gillises. But before I leave the Allens, this is another piece of the Allens before I kind of move on from them. This is Burke Hall branch of the Women's Institute. And this is 1948 to 49. And the honorary president is Her Majesty the Queen. And the president is Mrs. Allen from Ballater, my granny. How good is that? You get high up in life. And and this is what they were doing in 1946, 48, 49. Every week so the first week would have been, they had to make, the competition was the best drawn animal in 3 minutes. And in November, the memory is the treasure and guardian of all things. That was the saying. And then on the 10th of March, the instruction is the art of life was the maxim. And under that, the demonstration was trussing a fowl. And then the competitions were the best half dozen eggs, white and brown. And then there was a collection of eggs for the hospital. So this is, I was raking through all my stuff because my mother made absolutely sure that her children all knew who they were on the land. She gave us our roots, and she trawled, she found out exactly. So I know all my ancestors because my mother made sure I did, because she wanted me to have my roots. Roots are roots. And look what's happening in our unrootedness in the world. So these are my roots. I'm here because this is my rooted place. And I come back here often. But I have no focal point anymore. I go to all the places that I used to go, and I see them all because I want to be in my roots. And I go to Tullach, because in Tullach Kirkyard, both my families under the tree. First, as you go into on the left, there's a big tree. I can't mind, it's an oak tree, I think. And underneath that tree are both the families buried within 6 feet of each other. So where do I go now with my mother? So my mother was the youngest of these 3 kids, and she sang to me in the womb. She sang to me on the breast, and when she was born, my granddad was here, right here, on the night she was born. He was singing Bunthorne in Patience, and so she's called Elizabeth Jean Patience Gillis. And I'm just going to read you a wee poem about that night, because this takes me on to the next part of my thing. This is my mother's poetry books. There's 3 of them. Well, there's 2 of them. Awafa Ballater, and Ballater Bairn is the first one, and Awafa Ballater is the second one. And then she's got another one, Looking Back to Ballater, which is a whole load of short, looking back for Ballater is a whole load of short stories. I mean, my mother wrote a lot of things, and I've managed to inherit some of her writing talents, such as they are. Um, this is another Ballater bairn. This is what my mother wrote the night she was born. Another Ballater bairn, about the same time that I was born, in the wee sma' hours o' an April morn, doon by the Dee in the Tinkies Park, for the east wind's whistle pierced the dark. A tinker bairn I first saw licht, in a reek-filled bivvy at dead o' nicht. Our doctor, ca'd as a last resort, set going a life that was sweer to start. The tinks moved on in their ain guid time, and nae doubt the bairnie grew up the same as I did, though in a different way. Nor better, nor waur, to maturity. I winna whiles fit came a her, the bairnie born in the bivvy there. I winna fit her life has been, my wee twin sister Tinker Quine. Now that was my mother's attitude to life, really. She often, we moved on to live in Strathire in Perthshire for a while. And then we were in Barcaldine in Argyll. And I went to Oban High School. And then we came back to the west, to the east. And we made in Banchory, Huntly and then Banchory, because my father kept getting moved around with the Forestry Commission all the time. And all the time, my parents were very different characters. My father was a great country dancer, and he was always out there dancing and hailing hearty and laughing. And I mind going to see an Alwifie just last year, who's still alive, who went the dancing with him when he was dancing, she and her husband. And she says, oh, I can't. We're coming out and they'd say, oh, it'll be a great night tonight, Jimmy Allen's here. And Jimmy Allen, when you'd hear us laughing from the hole through the hall, that was Jimmy, that's my father. And there he is dancing. He was dancing, he got a 90th birthday dance at Dufton, and he's been a country dancer his whole life. So he whistling tunes, you'd hear him, every day you'd get tunes. All that kind of tunes, So that was my father. But my mother was a very different kettle of fish. She was a poet, she was quiet, she was a thinker, a deep thinker. And she wrote, her pleasure was to write. So she wrote. And one of the things that happened to us when we were living in Strathire was that we had an awful lot to do with the travelling folk. Now, they hold our culture. They held our finest singers, our finest folk singers were the travellers. Jeannie Robertson, Lizzie Higgins, Stanley Robertson, then the Stuarts of Blair. They held our cultural legacy. There were pipers. I remember, and I just want to read a little thing from Stanley. When I was at uni, Stanley Robertson was one of the, where have I got it? I know I've got it here. Stanley Robertson was one of the Robertsons, and he was working in a fish factory. He eventually became a great they were parading him around the world, talking about our culture and our music and our songs and our stories, because the travellers had it all. And so when I was a wee girl in Strathire, my dad would take me up to the bivvies, and I would sit and listen to them, and I would sing, because little kids, I was always singing. And then I would hear the pipes, and they would tell stories, and it was part of my life education. And I want to just say something, because it's very dear to my heart. Our oral tradition is so dear to my heart as a result, I think, of my mother singing to me in the womb, singing to me in the breast, singing to me every day. My father's music all the time. The pipes, I would hear them in the bivvies. So I just loved our music. And of course, I come to Auntie Lulu, and she was always singing, and she would sing in the Kirk, and she could read music and she could play the piano. I never could do any of that. She could play, and she would get invited up to the terribly salubrious places, to go and sing. And I mind, when I was about 6, I'm here and I get the privilege, I'm allowed to go up to Invercold, I think it is. Invercold House in Braemar or somewhere, I don't know where. And I'm to put on my best behaviour and sit with a nice frock on. And she goes and sings. and the people walking about with canopies and things. And I've never seen anything like this in my life. I'm sitting in the corner watching this, and my aunt's dressed up in this nice, like not very nice, what do you call it? A white and the tartan skirt, and she starts doing this. I think, what's she doing with her hands? It's like this, and she goes, "In a body meet a body coming through the rye." Totally aghast. I've never seen it like it in my life. She's never done that at home, And I'm thinking, what's she doing? I'm sitting there trying to be, and we're running. I'm kind of running home alongside her because she's. I don't know. We walked a hell of a lot in these days, but anyway, I think she got a lift home. But anyway, I'm saying to her, "Angela, what are you singing like that for?" She said, "They like it." I thought, well, I don't like it very much, but maybe they like it. But it's not my kind of singing. And I'm needing to sing like that when I'm a big wifey. No, that's what I was thinking, excuse me. It was just great. Anyway, so I was going to read you something that Stanley Robertson was the travelling folk guy. When I was at university, he was around. He was filleting the fish, but then he went on to do a great thing, Stanley did. And he says, the oral tradition, you've got everything. You've got a whole ancestry behind you. That comes through you. And when you're telling a story or singing a song, you are the vehicle by which a tribe comes through you. And all the ancestors come to help you. My Auntie Jeanie, this is Jeanie Robertson, used to say, when you sing a song, tak it out bonny. Pitting ballads out here and there, the travellers would have been creating waves in the air. It's recorded in the wa's and in the steens and in the trees. So when you sing a ballad, breathe it in till it fills every part of your body. And when you become all the characters, it's inside of you. Then you can tak it out bonny, as best as you can. She never said you had to be a great singer. She just wants you to feel the spirit and tak it out bonny. And I often remember that when I'm singing. All you have to do is just feel the spirit and tak it out bonny. You didn't have to get it perfect. There's no perfection in life. So I never gave myself a hard time when I was singing and wherever I was singing. Okay, so I'm going to read another one of my mum's poems now. Now, this would have been in Darragh, where they lived. It's got to have been in Darragh, this wee thing. It's called, and as I'm reading this, one of my mum's poems, I want just to pass this around. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but be gentle with it. You'll probably recognise it. I put it in plastic. I'm just going to pass it around. Have a wee look. I dug it up today. It's called Alfie's Autumn Crocus. A couthie, kindly, cheery neighbour Alfie, green finger tea. Our mam was fairteen up wi' his autumn crocus. Alfie gied her some that throve and brichtened her September border. The alman died, and often mam would say, I'm awfu' fond of Alfie's autumn crocus, fine creature he was. Och, I was just a young quine then. Mam's deed this mony's a year. But I hae flitted Alfie's crocus round a puckle hames. It aye survives to bloom van back end days are growing short and caul. It tells me something ill to put in words, but nae ill for the heart to understand. O permanence, and kindliness, and neighbours. That's Alfie's autumn crocus. I dug it up today. I've been doing the same as my mother was doing. So that's Alfie's autumn crocus you're touching. I didn't ken who Alfie was. But my granny was awful fond of Alfie, whatever Alfie was. I'll read it again. A couthy, kindly, cheery neighbour Alfie, green finger tea. Our mam was 40 and that was autumn crocus. Alfie gied her some that throve and bricht in her September border. The old man died, and often mam would say, I'm awful fond of Alfie's autumn crocus, fine creature that he was. Och, I was just a young quine then. Mam's died this mony a year, but I hae flitted Alfie's crocus round a puckle hames. It aye survives to bloom when back end days are growing short and caul. It tells me something, ill to put in words, but nae ill for the heart to understand. O permanence and kindliness and neighbours. Gorgeous poem, wee poem this. My mother was an absolute stickler for speaking the Doric, and it was quite hard for me because we spoke it at home. But when I went to school, they were all speaking like this, and this is how we were speaking, and it was the Gaelic speaking area, and I couldn't help but get a bit of that kind of beautiful lilt that I love in my language. And my granddad, now this Grandad Louis Gillis, who's made a big mark on life, he had the garage, Pringle's garage. And he was one of these, service to the Queen kind of things. You have them on the front of the what's this? By appointment. By appointment. So some of the people with plenty of money would order cars, great big cars. And he would go down to Greenock to the docks and pick them up. And on the way home, he would come by Strathire with his Jaguar or his Bentley or some bloody great big thing that we'd never seen the like of in our lives. But anyway, and he would take me back home to Ballater. And one day, and I remember I must have been about 5, maybe 4 or 5. Oh God, my mother said Grandad came to collect me. And I had to come back to Ballater because I couldn't wait to see my Auntie Lulu and my Granny Allen and all of them. And I'm sitting in this Bentley in this huge, I think it's a huge blooming great thing. I'm only 5, so I can get right in and he wants me to sit there. So I have to sit there and look at him as he's driving. And he's teaching me a song. And so by the time, and that's to be a surprise for Auntie Lulu, and I have to learn this song when I'm sitting in this middle of this thing. And he's teaching me a song, and I can sing this song now, and I'm going to sing it to you. But when I get to Auntie Lulu, and I sing the Auntie Lulu song, she thinks it's great. She always said it was great anyway, whatever. She was happiest. But when my mother heard about this, there was mild consternation. And every time, and I remember this little free song going on. What's going on with this song? Because I would just sing songs at the drop of a hat. And I never really fully got it until maybe 20 years ago when I was talking to Lulu. And basically, this song is a clerk in the office. And it's a skit on the Tuchters. And the Tuchters were people from Inverness that spoke like this, and these kind of people that I was beginning to speak like just a little bit. And he was for none of it. So I had to learn this song in his head for some reason. He taught his granddaughter this song so I could just so they could just assert the Doric, basically, because I wasn't speaking enough Doric. I hadn't got that twang in my voice. So this is a song, and I never understood it at the time, but I just sang it a lot because he wanted me to sing it all the time. And every time I sang it, he thought it was great, and everybody else, well, my mother was not impressed. And I couldn't work it out, and now I get it. But anyway, and I think it's a Jimmy Macbeth song, Jimmy Macbeth from up Port Soyway. And he was I used to go and listen to Jimmy Macbeth when I was a student because he was an original source singer, and he would sit and go and spit at everybody. And the audience probably didn't, because he was living in the lodging house and he'd got a lot of spit, so he was spitting as well as singing. So anyway, that was Jimmy Macbeth. But anyway, so I'm going to sing this song. This is my granddad's song. It's called The Clerk in the Office. Now Rosie she'll be prude, aye, and Rosie she'll be pro. She'll be whiter than the roses, aye, and redder than the snow. For a pro lad is coming token her a woe. A pro lad, a clerk in the office, with my hoo-high hunnel and my hunnel hoo-high. Come lachi achter mach the echel fichen in Milgai, with my hoo-high hunnel and my hunnel hoo-high. She's a bro lad, the clerk in the office. Now this pro lad was of gentle parents born. His grandfather was piper to Lord Sean Chukulorn, and his nainsel's ancestor could play upon the horn. She's a pro lad, the clerk in the office, with my hoo-high huddle and my hunnel hoo-high. 40 bog and suri clatten and varalachai, with my hoo-high hunnel, my hunnel hoo-high. She's a bro lad, the clerk in the office. Now this pro lad, when he was but a bairn, he was sent to the college education for to learn, and oh, but you could tell how many beans was in a herring. She's a pro lad, the clerk in the office, with my hoo-high hunnel and my hunnel hoo-high. Come lachi achter mach die hegel fichen in Milgai, with my hoo-high hunnel and my hunnel hoo-high. She's a pro lad, the clerk in the office. Now this pro lad, he could tell you all forby how many million stars there will be hanging in the sky, and how many 1,000 miles Ben Nevis shall be high. She's a bro lad, the clerk in the office, with my hoo-high hunnel and my hunnel hoo-high. Come nachi after mach the echel fichen in Milgai, my hoo-high hunnel and my hunnel hoo-high. She's a bro lad, the clerk in the office. Would she wouldna hae the butcher, she wouldna hae the baker, she'd no hae the draper, nor yet the undertaker. But she just had the lad that pushed the pen across the paper. A bro lad, a clerk in the office, with my hoo-high hunnel and my hunnel hoo-high. 40 bog and suri clatten and varalachai, with my hoo-high hunnel and my hunnel hoo-high. Just a bro lad, the clerk in the office. Now this, now we'll all be proud of Rosie we'll be proud, but 'twas on this very step, the present moment that she stood, for she's married to a man that's born of gentle blood. A pro lad, a clerk in the office, with my hoo-high hunnel and my hunnel hoo-high. 40 bog and suri clatten and varalachai, with my hoo-high hunnel and my hunnel hoo-high. She's a bro lad, the clerk in the office. That was my grandad. That was my grandad. Bless him. Now, my mother was very hot on the Doric. And this is another one of her poems. And I always remember this because I try and do it. But yeah, it's great to come back and just be doing it naturally, really. This is called The Privilege. Dinna just use your mother tongue to sing a days when you was young, but ilka time you open moo, use it to speak o here and now. Dinna make it a curio, like an old fossil put on show. Bring it recht out into the licht and make it work to keep it brecht. It doesn't hae to gang the way o horse-drawn plough or fireside sway. It's fit to handle with a lathe, space shuttle, flecht or microwave. And friends, whatever else you do, there's a ploy you may never try. Dinna set out your tongue to study. There's plenty doing that already. There's learned chiels and dames and new that never hate in their moo. The more they learn, the less they choose it. In daily life, they seldom choose it. Scots intellectuals, no less, they wouldn't want to soon like us. For speaking Scots, they feel unsuited. They only want to speak about it. Friends, gin you hinna reach that pass, I beg you, ilka loon and lass, use the old tongue and keep its edge sharp as a valued privilege. Yeah. That was her take on speaking the Doric. She went on to write the place names of Upper Deeside, Side. And in the course of doing that with Adam Watson, and in the course of doing that, she came across Mrs. Bain, who was right up in Braemar, right, I can't mind, far in Braemar, right up the top near the Linnadee, I think. Was it? Aye, right in the back end of a glen. She found Mrs. Bain, and Mrs. Bain. Gairnside, was it? Was that where she been? Gairnside? Rob Bain, but the mother was brought up. Aye, Inverrye, aye. Talking of Inverrye, my mother also wrote about the Gleneye clearances. It's an academic paper she wrote with Adam Watson about what happened in Gleneye with the deer clearances. Families have to leave. But where was I with she went into this house and she met Mrs. Bain, and Mrs. Bain was the last of the Braemar Gaelic speakers. She had been, because this area would have been, how many, 200 years ago, there would have been a hybrid between Doric and Gaelic. The further up you went, the more Gaelic. Further down, less Gaelic. But all the place names tell the stories. All these place names in this place name book tell the stories of this place. And she went all over Glengairn and wrote. I mean, she was just constantly this. And to be honest, I was running about the world. I was running about the world working with children, because that was the profession I chose. So I was working with traumatized children, and I was writing books about that. One of which is that sexually abused children at the time, and I was running a large organization. I was working all over the world, and we were working with little children who had had awful things happen to them, and I was using play and stories and songs to help children talk about what had happened and then get it through the court system, because these were children who were voiceless if you didn't help them to open their mouths and say something about what happened to them. And that work took me all over the world. But at the time, I wasn't paying much attention to what my mother was doing, plodding around Glengairn, to be honest. I had another life. But I was always keeping in touch. And who was I with Glengairn? Yes, so this is a Scottish magazine article about Jean Bain. And it was when they discovered her talking, her story was that she'd been, her mother, it's the same, she was born illegitimately in London, and her young mother had to send her back here, and she got brought up by an old aunt and uncle, skipped a generation, and they were Gaelic speakers. So in her early life here, she only had the Gaelic. And then she went on to teach. I think she was teaching in Braemar somewhere, was she? But my mother, but this is the story in the Scots magazine that of Jean Bain, because Braemar Gaelic had died out, and she was the last carrier of it. And when all this happened, the School of Scottish Studies came running up and recorded her, and the whole thing. But that was, yeah. This lady, so this is her grandmother. This is Louis Gillis's mother. And she was some woman. Oh, gosh, she was some woman. There's pictures of her at the wedding, my parents' wedding. She's sitting at the wedding. And this is her elementary. She was born in Inverdeen, down behind the hotel. What's the name of that hotel? The Alexandria. This is her Jeannie Strachan. She's a Strachan. And she passed the prescribed examination in musical memory and something in time and sight singing in 1893. Now my mother, she had to put up with Granny. This Granny was just a real card. I mean, she was a character of the highest order. And Louis Gillis did not have an easy early life because he was born illegitimately too. and of that generation that you really weren't allowed to be born illegitimately because you got a tough time. And he had a very tough time. His early life was just awful because he was sent away. And he was born, so this lady, my great granny, got pregnant by a guy who also had another family in the village, married in another family in the village. And so this baby was sent up to Tulloch to be wet nursed out of the village because of the shame of it. And the story in the family goes that he was up there with being wet nursed with a woman who had about 8 kids wet nursing them. Probably everybody's illegitimate offspring, probably, but I don't know. And the doctor went up because my grandfather had a very bad mastoid ear problem. And the doctor came in and looked at him and then went down to the lady that's my great-great-grandmother, whose husband had left and gone to Australia. And I've got all his poems to this wee soul. I think she might have had personality issues, this great granny, but anyway. And the doctor said to this woman, you know, you do something about this or I'll expose you in the Kirk. So my grandfather was brought back and brought up kind of on sufferance by this lady and her daughter who hadn't got much influence. And if I read you a story of this lady, of my great-grandmother, who is this lady who's Louis mother, and she's a bonny-looking woman. That's her here, and you'll see it in the wedding photographs here. She's standing there. She's always. I think she died about 2 or 3 years after that. I never knew her. But she's in the wedding photographs down here, and next to my christening certificate, which is here because I was christened here. Anyway, so I'm going to just read you a story about Granny's War, because this is the kind of lady she was, and my mother wrote this. And you'll recognise it. There might be people in this room who are part of these families, so I don't know who they are, but it'd be great if there was people. And it's called Granny's War, 1939 to 46, and it's in this book, Looking Back to Ballater. I really would like to get these republished, because there's none of these around. I think I need to try and do that from Ballater. And it'd be great to give the proceeds to Ballater, because my mother would love that, you know. But anyway, looking back for that, Granny's War. And this is a great one. I'm nae putting that thing on, said Granny. I'll just hae to get smoored. What are you nae putting on, Granny? I speered. That blinking gas mask, she snorted. Fancy so John Mickey and Willie Fraser can themselves wardens and come and ruin saying I have to put a corsling like that on my face and I'm nae for it. I was gae near 10-year-old now and I had been reading the paper and listening to the wireless. But fit if there's a gas attack, Granny? She shook her head. Well, if the Germans is going to come here with their bombs, I'll just hae to get killed and that's a' about it. I canna stick the stink of that thing on my face. Daddy says they winna bother coming to Ballater with their bombs onyway, I consoled her. Granny snockered. I dinna ken, some folk says they'll be wanting to bomb the Royals at Balmoral, but I'm sure I just dinna ken. I can't understand ration books and identity cards and I can't deal with gas masks. The ration books is just so that everybody gets a fair share of the food, Granny. But it says I have to take margarine. And what would I do with margarine? I only eat butter. I had this answer ready. Mom says if you can't get enough butter, you'll maybe be glad of margarine. Granny dismissed the rationing system with a fine theatrical sweep of the arm. When I put butter on my toast in the morning, it just melts awa. But I'll get all the butter I need. Mrs. Crowell, with all yon bairns, has more butter ration than she can afford to buy, so I'm buying some off of her. You can't do that, Granny. It's It's against the law. Everybody's to stick to the ration. I was horrified at this unpatriotic breaking of the rules of the rationing game. I wad down to Mrs. Kroll's door and say, I've come for my granny's butter, and you'll see if I can do that, rejoined Granny, fair rocked up about it. Go on now. I stuck to my guns. No, it's against the rules. I'm nae gone. I flung out of Granny's house and tore home down D Street, thinking fu queer it was that Granny, that couldn't understand things like bombs and ration books, I kent fu to get that she wanted. What was it about Granny? Mum laughed when I told her my tale, but right enough, she didna make me go for the butter. Whoever must stand in the nation's hour o' need made nae difference, as the couthie Mrs. Kroll sent ane of her bairns along to Granny's house with 2 rations of butter each week after that, and Granny never missed her het buttered toast. A day when Granny and me was half a busy watching the hens scratting, she suddenly come up with, "When am I getting my vimmermints?" You're fit? I was fairly stumped. My vimmermints. I could only shake my head. Phew, you fool thing. You can't fit I mean. You're just trying to make you out your old granny stupid. I'm nae, I protested. I've never heard of vimmermints. Is it some kind of a sweetie? With a crooked pinky, Granny scratched her head delicately underneath the edge of her red woolen tammy. Well, I dinna ken if it's a sweetie, but it man be something awfu' good for us, because Lord Woolton and the radio doctors I on about abody getting plenty of vimmermints, and I haven't had nane. Her bottom lip stuck out the way I did when Granny wasn't pleased. It dawned on me what she was on about. Lord Woolton, she'd been listening to some radio blather about food values or something of that kind. Vitamins, I said. That's what you mean. Aye, vimmermints. What I said. She flung back at me real sharp. What why have I nae got nony? I hunted through my 10-year-old vocabulary for the words to explain dietetics to Granny. They're just things that's in your food if you eat the right kinds of things, I chanced. Losh be here, spluttered Granny, fair work it up. Are they putting physic into our meat now? That's one of the Germans and their bombs and gas things. No, says I in a hurry. Vitamins is the things that's in your food already that make it good for you. You dinna hate to get them anywhere else. She wasn't convinced. I never like it the look of on Woolton, she grumbled. I gave up. You could ask Mum about the vitamins, I suggested, a lame kind of way, and cleared out, leaving her glowering. Getting Granny's shopping done had I been a lesson in applied frugality. If you discount the butter, rationing didn't really affect her muckle. She'd been buying Athen in wee quantities a' her days, with tuppence worth here and a penny worth there. Her instructions were aye explicit, as I reported at her house daily after school, and we ran through a wee rehearsal each time. You just say, my granny would be obliged if she could get a fourpenny bit o' steak, just a finger length. Or else, threepence worth of mince to my granny, please. Or, my granny would like just 2 slices of bacon, please. Or, 4pence of cheese, please, to my granny. I was told to make it clear that this was Granny's order, but there was no need. Ballater shop folk all kent fit to expect afore I even opened my shamefaced moo. Willie Davidson, the butcher, minded him. Eans I had cannily stepped by Glenn, his ill-natured old collie, sleeping at the shop door. Mind on that? Was I a good-humoured manny? After listening to my order, he'd wink and say, my granny's healing hame, in a pocky kind of way. I had no idea why this was funny, but I gave him a wide grin since he seemed to expect it, and because I was grateful that he didn't attack the mickey or make me feel awkward. When the pint system was started for biscuits and tin stuff, Granny was dashed quick to realise its potential. You didn't hate to stick to your registered grocer for getting things with pints, and she was able, or rather I was, to shop around for biscuits. The rehearsal went, gang to ask Isaac Wright and say, have you a quarter of McVitie and Price's digestive biscuits? If he say, no, but I've got granola, then says you, my granny doesn't like granola, thank you, and ging down and try milk. But you're nae a customer here, granny. Think it doesn't matter with pints, and only why your mammy's a customer there. I'll better say it's for you, granny, or they micht gie mam on it when she goes for our biscuits, if they're under the counter. Losh for a fuss. Well, please yourself, and if they hinna nae McVitie and Price's digestive, you could try Gillen's. If nobody has them, you can ging back to Isaac and tak his granola, though I dinna like them. What a woman. Over the years, Granny's frugal way of shopping paid off. Bitty by bitty, food prices rose, but some way or another, Granny's threepence worth of mince didn't seem to diminish in size. Nor a finger length of steak rise in price. Granny kent food to work the system. Around the time of the Dunkirk evacuation, all duds produced her umpteens litters of kittens. Daddy was called to droon them, but a lusty grey lad. Fit are you going to ca him? I asked, stroking the soft fur. Och, I suppose it'll be Diddley, says Granny, nae thinking muckle out. Diddley some way or other didna seem in keeping with the stirring times we was living in. Could you nae pick a decent name for it this time instead of Duds and Diddley? Losh, fit if you ca a decent name. I considered. What about Winston? Granny, a true blue Tory, was fair tickle pink, and Winston it was. You ken what they say about gie a dog a bad name. Well, that pittling grew into the biggest, fattest, ugliest Tom I've ever you saw, and it was spiled silly, of course. He's a gran old Winston Churchill, Granny would say fondly, as the foul breed booricht underneath her bedclothes. Then there was Quentin Reynolds, the American commentator. Granny wrote a fan letter to Quentin Reynolds, and she got a reply. She swanked about it for weeks, showing it to the other neighbours. I listened to his wireless talks because the way he took the rise out of the Nazis appealed to her sense of the dramatic. I like the way he says Mr. Schicklgruber. That's Hitler's real name, you ken. That'll teach him the coarse brute he is. It was a bit of a shock getting near the end of the war to find Germans looked more or less the same as Scotsmen. Granny saw her first Germans when a prisoner of war camp was set up near Ballater, and the Roman Catholic POWs marched past her house to the chapel ilka Sunday morning. Each man's suit had a brecht-coloured patch, blue or yellow or red, on the back of the jacket, and on the back side or knee of the breeks. Granny didn't ken fit to mak of the patches. After the war, as demobilisation began, new folk started to appear on the Ballater scene. Young war veterans was turning away for careers in the south and looking for a quiet life in the unspelt northeast. One of them was a typical mid-class Londoner, good-looking and well-mannered, with a puckle years of war service ahint him, in the tank corps, if I mind recht. His name was Ivan Toulmin Roth. I mind Ivan Toulmin Roth. Fit why was he sick enough a queer name? Spirit Granny if he's English. He says his great-grandfather was a Hungarian. Hungarian? Granny didn't ken fit to mak of that. The day came when we was forced to introduce this pure unsuspecting young child to our gran. Losh, says she. You just look ourselves to look at. I would never ken you was ane of them. Know that they've taken the patches off your breeks. That was my great granny. Now, I'm going to sing you one song now, and this is the song to finish off with. And so when I was going all over the world, I would be speaking to my mother on the phone sometimes, and she'd say, one day she said to me, she loved Violet Jacob's poetry. Violet Jacob was a poet from the Mearns. She was from Montrose, and she wrote the most beautiful poetry. She was a poet, really beautiful quality poetry. And my mum said, I've made up a wee tune, because my mother could sing as well. She'd made up tunes. And I've got a bonny wee tune to the Lach next to the year. I thought, how gorgeous is that? And I'm on the phone, right, Mum, sing it, sing it. So she sings it. She only has to sing it 2 or 3 times and it's in my head. So I get it. And I'm driving, I'm going to the airport and I'm getting on planes and I'm singing it. And the words are, you've left the sun and the candle licht and the star licht and the woods baith green and sere. And yet I hear you singing down the braes in the licht next to the year. You were sae glad you were icy like the lave rock was hurt as in the mist. Nae mair for ye the young green leaves will dance, no, nor yet the Aldanes drift. For thoughts had ye in the ill-foured nichts of winter, but the ingle nukes o' hame, love lit your wye and laid about your feet, year in, year out the same. You've left the sun and the candle licht and the star licht and the woods baith green and sere, and yet I hear you singing down the braes in the licht nights of the year. And say my ain, my bonniest and my dearest, I'll lay me down to sleep and let the world that has nae sound for me, its watch o' silence keep. But whiles and whiles of the candle licht and the star licht, I'll waken it to hear yon lilting voice that's singing down the braes in the licht nights of the year. Violet Jacob had lost her only son in the war, and she wrote that for him, I think. My mother loved it, and so I learnt it. And I was in Bosnia working, after the Bosnian War, working with people that had been through unspeakable horrors. And I came home and I heard that my mother was in the hospital immediately. So I came back up here and my mother died about 3 or 4 months after that. She had cancer, which was very virulent and nobody knew. And about 2 or 3 days before, no, a week before she died, I said to her, Mum, what do you want for your funeral? How do you want it to be? And she said, oh, I for Bonnie Violet Jacob, the last next to the year. And I said, Mum, you know there's a tune to that. No, there's no tune. There's no tune. It's a poem. It's a poem. I said, Mum, there's a tune. You taught it to me years ago. I can hear it. Oh. So I said, would you like me to sing it? And and she said, oh, maybe, but will you be upset? I said, I'll be upset. Of course I'll be upset. And then she said, but you'll have to make it okay with my father because I don't want any fights with my father. I just can't. If you want to sing it. And then she said, I don't know how she got the energy for this. I'll tell you what, you go and sing it to Lulu. So I came all the way up here and I sang it to Lulu. And Lulu got it. She could get it fast. And she got the song. And then, so if I faltered, Lulu was going to sing with me. That was Mum's wish. So my mother passed. My father didn't fight, it wasn't the done thing at Scott's funeral. But I do things that aren't the done thing most of the time. But my father doesn't quite like I do, or didn't. So we had some little. So anyway, we go to the crematorium, and I sing. And Paul Anderson, my auntie was very involved with with the Andersons in Thailand when they were kids. So she often had them here at concerts and things. And so he played a lament. And I went up to the coffin and I just sang the song. And once I finished singing it, I just knew it was okay. My voice didn't crack. It was okay. Auntie Lulu didn't have to sing with me. And when, at the end of it, I was standing, and you know how you have to stand at a Scots funeral in those, you're shaking hands and everybody's in a black suit. And men that I didn't know in black suits were grabbing me, saying, oh, and hugging me. It was just like it had done something. The song had done something to the whole funeral that changed something. And I know that that's what music can do. It can hold something in grief that other things can't, which is why we've got Pibroch laments. And that's part of the work I'm doing now, is working with the Pibroch, because we've got that music holds enormous suffering, and that's its work. So I'm going to sing you the song now, and that's when I'll close. And if anybody's got any questions, I've not even begun to talk about a lot of the stuff I've got here, but there's not enough time, so I'll just sing the song. And Mum, this is for you. And this is for the Gillises, and this is for the ancestors, and this is to say thank you for all the people that have gone before, have brought to us, because they helped mold this place and mold us. And yeah, and I just want to say that, I think. My mother's tune. You've left the sun and the candle light and the starlight and the woods both green and sere, and yet I hear ye sing on down the braes in the licht nights o' the year. You were singing, you were icing like the lavrock was hurt is in the mist. Nae mair for ye the young green leaves will dance, no, nor yet the aldens drift. Fit thoughts had ye in the elf-hour nights o' winter, but the engle nukes o' hame lovely to your wy and played about your feet, year in, year out the same. You've left the sun and the candle light and the starlight, the woods both green and sere, and yet I hear ye sing on down the braes in the licht nights o' the year. And say, my ain, my bonniest and my dearest, I'll lay ye down to sleep, and let the world that has nae soon for me its watch o' silence keep. But whiles and whiles o' the candle light and the starlight, I'll walk in it to hear yon lilting voice that sing on down the braes and the licht nights o' the year. Yon lilting voice that sing on down the braes and the licht nights o' the year. Thank you. Maybe I should stop there.